Today I'm going in depth with Tim Barnett, founder and CEO of Focus Training Academy. The reason I wanted to interview Tim is because he's the perfect example of black male achievement. He came from nothing and turned his life into an opportunity where not only he is out of poverty, but now wants to give back to others. He's a former JCPS student, and he has an amazing story. So without further ado, let's go in depth with Tim Barnett. All right, Tim, thank you for joining me today on the podcast. How you doing?
Oh, man, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Okay, so just do me a favor and let's start at the beginning. Walk me through your upbringing and paint a picture of the household that you grew up in.
Man, west end of Louisville, Kentucky, Victory Park area, and, I'm sure a lot of people know and understand Victory Park and what goes on there. My grandparents lived on Barnett Avenue, which was right across the tracks. So I spent a lot of time between, Barnett and Algonquin and Cypress, and Victory Park. So it was good because I was just kind of all over the West End. Mom was a custodian, dad a cab driver. So we didn't have much, didn't come from a lot. But, what we did have was just, the love of just the neighborhood, and the neighborhood is what made us. Coming up, I'm truly from the story of where the ceilings leak, and there was no showers or anything like that. That was the reality for us. And my mom told me later that the house that we had, they were able to purchase the house for like $13,000, and the house needed a bunch of work, but at the time, my dad just moved back here really from Chicago. And so it was an opportunity for him to kind of, build our family. So my dad bought the house, knowing that there was going to be a lot of repairs that he had to do on it. So, over time, he made it, he turned the house into a home. So I didn't, literally, we didn't have a shower. We stood up. We stood up at the sink, between my two brothers and I. And when it was cold outside, the pipes froze. We would put the water in the tea kettles. You hear the whistle blow. Mm-hmm. Go get it. Bring the brown pan down. Fill the pan up. Go upstairs, and you wash up, and then your brother coming right behind you. When it rained, the ceilings leaked in the living room, in my mom's room, and kind of when you went into the kitchen. But that's just the reality of it. And it always got better because my dad was always working right. to improve our conditions. So, it sounds cliche, but, that's where I come from. And it's cliche because a lot of us minority kids, that's where we come from. Yeah. That's our reality.
Yeah. So when you talk about, what I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, what I think of somebody that didn't have a shower, I picture in my mind somebody that probably didn't have the best clothes, somebody that may or may not, if you can't get into a shower, you may or may not smell the best when you go to school every day. I know you're an athlete, and we'll get to that point, but if you're an athlete, you probably needed another pair of shoes to play basketball in that you may or may not have had. So when you went to school, what kind of clothing did you have? And the reason I'm asking that is because, a lot of times in impoverished neighborhoods, you have some the best jokers and the best jankers, as we call them in Tennessee, are the people that live in the hood. So when you went to school, were you made fun of? Was there times where you felt bad for not being able to afford the shoes? Like, what was your life like at school if your home life looked like that?
We didn't have a lot. Like I tell people, for us, going shopping at the beginning of the year, like mom and them, they may take us to Value City to get us a couple pair of jeans, a couple pair of smacks. I never forget, it was different colors, smack pants. And then, our shoes came from Payless. And, and I wore the K-Swiss with the 6 stripes sometimes. And new shoes for me was the thrift store in Portland and then the thrift store on 22nd. That's where our new shoes came from. And which obviously kids are harsh, and kids made fun of us all the time. Okay. Because they knew, man, them shoes aren't new. Where'd you get those shoes from? You just all of a sudden showed up in those shoes that you rocking every day as your everyday shoe. So we had to grow up with that. Also, I didn't look the best. So I was, I had, they made fun of me. I was, a skinny little dude, which I think kind of led me into some of the things it was that I was doing, because when I came up, I was into the gangs and all of that stuff. I wasn't really an athlete. Right. I wasn't really into that. I was into, running around being like a misfit. Right. And my older brothers played, but, for me, my attention was kind of, being the bad guy. So to kind of getting back to your question, we didn't have much. I got new shoes at the beginning of the school year, and those were from Payless, and that was it. Okay. You know what I mean? So we just kind of had to make do, and our parents did what they could. Okay. And that's just what it was, which I think developed, my inner toughness mentally, and the physical toughness, because, you had to be able to stand up to it.
You're gonna have to explain what smacks are. What's smacks?
Smacks, man. It was a brand of pants.
Like Dickies, kind
of sort of like Dickies, but it wasn't the Dickie material, and it's hard to explain. But it wasn't jeans, wasn't corduroy. You know what I mean? It was, and then they had brown. They had a violet color.
So you just had all the colors.
You know what I mean? I had smacks.
Okay.
That's what it was.
Okay, so you said you weren't always an athlete. So at what point did?
Well, I was always an athlete, but I was never like going saying I'm gonna be an athlete, or I want to play basketball, or I'm doing this. You know what I mean? When I was running around the neighborhood just kind of bananas, and I said I was at my grandma's house a lot when my parents were at work, and there was a guy named Mr. Carr. He had a son. They lived on the corner, and his son, Austin Carr, actually, he's got a son that's at North Odom now, Rico. His dad was the first one to acknowledge and was like, "Man, I need to get you playing in some organized sports." So I was probably about like 10 years old. Okay. And he took me down to Southwick, and that was the first organized football team that I played on. Was down at Southwick Community Center for the Chiefs. So shout out to Mr. Carr, rest in peace. Because I was trying to find a way to really get away from the streets, from all the gang stuff. And, when I say that, I'm from, and I'm not proud of it now, but, my truth is my truth. And that's what my story is. And I use my story to try to tell kids what not to do, and look at me now and say, I'm far from perfect, but this is where I came from.